Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel, or just welcome if you're new. My name is Eboni Harris and I'm a serial entrepreneur based in Houston, Texas. So today's going to be a little bit of a rant, but I feel like it's needed. I have had a lot of conversations and just watching relationship dynamics all the time. It is so often that we don't recognize the importance of addressing issues. And I just want to talk a little bit about the concept of, if you want to fix a problem, you got to address the problem. It seems so common sense. It seems like, duh, if I want to fix something, I need to address it. I can't just pretend like it's not there. But oftentimes in relationships, whether that's with friends or family or just romantic partnerships, there is this idea of, I'll just deal with it on my own. It's fine, it'll just go away, right? And I'm guilty of it. Most people are guilty of it. It just depends on the type of relationship they have. But the reality is, if you want a problem to be better, you have to address it. We talk about attachment styles, and one of the attachment styles is avoidant, but I don't even think it is necessarily, it has to be an avoidant attachment style, right? Some people are more secure or more head on when it comes to romantic relationships versus family relationships. Some people are more head on when it comes to friends versus their partner, right? So, but there are people that can be avoidant when it comes to certain topics, when it comes to certain issues. And oftentimes there are several reasons why they are, and it makes sense. It makes perfect sense why they may think avoidance is a real solution when there are issues. And so I want to kind of talk about some of those and then negate some of those as well. So the first one is, oftentimes we say, okay, I'll just figure it out on my own, right? But if you are in a partnership and the relationship is a relationship problem, don't you think both people should have a say in figuring out what the problem is? Now, granted, I am a big believer in most of our issues within relationships are based on our own histories, our own childhoods, our own experiences, and that's what creates these triggers and frustrations within a relationship, 100%. But if your partner doesn't know that you're triggered, if your partner doesn't know that this is an issue, then why don't get a chance to even try to help you with this, right? If your trigger is abandonment, right? That's a big one I always talk about. So if I leave because we're in the middle of a fight and I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna go so we calm down, da da da. And for you, that creates a huge trigger for you, and you're upset and you're crying and you feel alone and all of that, you feel unloved. For me, I'm like, okay, I'm giving space, we're gonna calm down, we're gonna get back together. If that is your trigger and you say, well, it's my issue, it's my abandonment issue, so I don't need to tell them about it. Why not? Because what will probably happen is they'll say, oh, okay, I didn't realize that was a trigger for you. Well, then I can stay. Let's just try to watch a movie or do something to get us out of this space and then come back to the topic. Or let's just go to bed then, and then tomorrow morning we'll talk about it, right? Maybe they can work with you, especially if they don't have a trigger where or any type of issues around like running away from issues. Then they might be say like, hey, just let me know and I can actually like have a conversation. We can have a conversation about it, or we can find another solution, right? But we often, if we figure out, if we think it's our issue, then it's like, well, it's my issue, so I need to figure it out on my own. And truly, sure, there are issues you need to figure out. Probably need a therapist, right? Because we are not that great at figuring things out on our own. But there are things that you might need to tap in and say, like, hey, this is a me issue, I need to figure it out. But that doesn't mean you don't let them know what's going on. That doesn't mean you don't tell them why you're being so quiet and why you're not communicating and why you're distant, why you are distant at the time, right? You let them know what's happening and they can say, hey, I get it. It's something you figure out. But as your partner, I can also do this to help the situation, right? So again, if we're in a relationship, why are we not discussing relationship issues? Now, it's different if you're saying, I have a work issue, I have a friendship issue, I have a family issue, I have something outside of this relationship that I am trying to figure out, and I don't necessarily need your input. Completely understandable. But even if it is a relationship issue and you say, hey, this is the problem, I'm not ready for feedback right now, but I know that this is what's going on, then they can respect that as well. But just understand that if we're talking about relationship issues, there are two, three, four, however many people are in that relationship, those people should be involved in the solution when it comes to the relationship issues. Also, we often think maybe it's just not a big enough deal to bring up, right? Oh, that annoyed me, that frustrated me, and we're trying to figure out, is this a big deal? Completely understandable, right? It makes sense. If you left a shoe at the front door and I tripped over it and I'm annoyed, but you've never done that before and that's a first, do I need to bring it up? I would say just be like, man, you left the shoe here, in a more like lighthearted way, but maybe not, right? Maybe you say that's not a big deal. This is the first time they did it. I don't need to bring up every issue the first time it happens because that doesn't mean it's going to be an ongoing thing. But if there is small things here and there Maybe you tap into like, well, what does this make me feel like? I feel inconsidered. I feel unloved. I feel like they just don't care about me, right? If that's what's coming up, then you can communicate that to them, right? I feel like when you leave stuff in front of the door, you don't even think about the fact that I live here as well. And it becomes an inconvenience because it kind of, I know that's not your intention, but it makes me feel like, dang, they don't even care that I got to come home and I got to watch where I step just to walk into the house, right? You can bring up things that are not a big deal and they don't become a big fight. They don't become a huge ordeal. It can just be a conversation. It could be a quick, hey, that kind of bothered me. It made me feel like this. Oh, okay, cool. And then y'all move past it. Now, again, you have to know your partner, you have to know yourself, but it's possible to have conversations that are not taken as like this deep personal offense. And how do you know it's not a big deal if you don't let them know that it's bothering you, right? Because they might say, oh no, that's a huge deal. Like I had no clue. Or they might say, oh, okay, I didn't know. I got it. We'll take care of it. But they won't know. And you're trying to figure this out by yourself. And then again, your behavior is changing. You're acting differently. And they're trying to figure out what's wrong with you. And you're sitting there ruminating on this situation that they didn't even know was a problem. Another big issue why people tend to not bring up issues or can seem avoidant is because they just don't want to argue. They think anytime they bring up a topic, it's arguing. Anytime we have a disagreement, it's arguing, right? And so we have to understand that there's a difference between argument, disagreeing, and just plain communication, right? I say that's, and the reason why I always say people always argue is because most people put all of that in the same category. If you don't argue, it's a problem, right? If you're in a relationship, you never have an argument, then it's like, oh, what's going on? Why y'all not having arguments? Somebody's needs aren't being met. But having communication around an issue is not necessarily a argument, or it's not, I'll say it's not a negative if you have a disagreement around something or if you're talking about a certain topic. So people don't want to argue, but then when it boils down to it, starts to become you don't want to communicate, right? Because just because we go back and forth, we have a difference of opinion, my feelings are hurt, your feelings are hurt, does not mean that we're in this like detrimental state of our relationship where we're yelling and screaming and, whatever. It is okay to disagree. It is okay to talk about disagreements and be in moods, and that all that stuff is very, very normal. But when we try to avoid altogether, it does nothing but build it up more and more and more, because the more that you don't talk about it, the more your brain is like, see, the last time they did this, I was so frustrated. Man, they did this 3 days ago and they ain't fixed it yet. But you haven't talked to them about it because you didn't want to argue. So you're just holding on to it by yourself, right? So I get it. I understand you don't want to have blowups. You don't want to argue. You want to keep the nice fuzzy feeling that you have when y'all are doing good. But you're not in that mood. You're not in a nice fuzzy feeling because you're sitting here thinking in the back of your mind how frustrated you are, but you don't want to bring it up because you don't want to mess up the mood. But it would probably go a lot quicker if you brought it up, y'all addressed it, and y'all could get past it within a few hours or maybe a day, and then y'all are back in a nice fuzzy mood versus you holding on to it for 3 days. And then the next time it happens, you're holding on to it for 5 days. And then the next time it happened, you're mad for 2 weeks because it never got addressed the first 2 times it happened. One of my favorites, I'm not going to say that, but another one is if I share my concerns, they're going to just do what they want to do anyway. Right? If I tell them what my problem is, if I tell them what frustrated me, if I tell them how I feel about something, they're going to do what they want to do anyway. Okay. Like, I don't understand. I understand it, but I don't understand why that's a surprise or what the expectation is. We often have this belief that if I say, I don't like that you cut your toenails in the bed. That was a debate that I had with a group of friends one time. You cut your toenails in the bed. I think it's disgusting. I don't like it. And they say, okay, I understand that, but I don't see anything wrong with cutting my nails in the bed. I've done it my whole life. I clean up after myself. My bed is normally clean. I wash my sheets pretty regular. Like I don't see the issue. Well, I don't like it because XYZ, da da da. Cool. Okay, so what if we do this, right? So if they don't automatically say, okay, fine, I won't cut my nails in the bed, you're like, see, that's why I need to tell people my feelings. I need to tell them how I feel. No, they're allowed to say, I hear you, but also I disagree, right? And maybe come up with solutions. I can put a towel down. I can put paper towels down. I can cut on the side of the bed and have a little bucket that catches my toenails. Like whatever it needs to happen, there can be other compromises, but we often want people just to agree. Like, we believe that if they understand our experience, then they will agree with us, which is not the case. I can understand your experience and still say, but my experience is this, and it's been perfectly fine. And so I don't see a problem with it, right? And so I think it's important that we recognize that just because someone understands where we're coming from doesn't mean they're going to agree wholeheartedly or do what we need exactly the way we wanted them to do it. There may be as they get your information, then they're thinking of solutions that could work for both of y'all. Hey, what if I clip my nails, but immediately clean it up? Or what if I do it when you're not in bed so you don't have to see it, right? But and as long as you don't see any traces of toenails in the bed, then we're good, right? If that's the case, then can we come up with a solution, right? But again, if we feel like, well, when I share my thoughts, you don't do what I say, it's kind of a, do you believe that relationships should be controlled in that way? Do you believe relationships should be, I get to say what I want and I get what I want and that's it? There's no question. There's no, you just do what I want. Is that what you think about relationships? Or do you believe relationships should be collaborative? Do you think that both people should have a say in how the relationship goes? Or do you believe you have a better way of doing relationships than they do, and so they need to just follow your lead? Because if that's the case, then those are completely different conversations that need to be had. The last one I'm going to talk about is the belief that either I or they will eventually get over it. It's no point in talking about it. We'll get past it, right? If we just ignore it, it'll go away. And while that can be true, sometimes it always comes back. It is very rare that it does not come back because it bothered you for a reason. And if they are unaware of the fact that it bothered you, then it's probably going to come back again and again and again, right? So while it might take 3 days to get back to a normal space, we didn't address it, but now we're back normal, we're good, cool, it is what it is. But recognize that you could have got past it probably in a day or less, right? If you had just addressed it, and it's going to keep coming up. So now we're locking out 3, 5, 7 days of us not getting along or not talking to each other or whatever, versus let's just address it. Let's talk about it. Both of us feel heard. Cool. Let's move on, right? And doing it in a couple hours or a day. Let me know in the comments, how do you handle disagreements, issues? Are you a heads-on person, or are you a person that's kind of like, if I don't have to address it, I'm not going to address it, and it'll eventually get better, or it'll come up when it needs to come up, right? Let me know which one are you, and defend your point. You don't have to do that, but just let me know. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel, and I will talk to you next time. That's all. Bye.